Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Senator Schumer, for your leadership and for being such a wonderful colleague to Hillary and the work you guys have done for New York and the country in these last challenging years. And thank you, Charles Rangel, for a million things, for being the first member of the New York delegation to encourage Hillary to run for the United States Senate in 1999. And for your ascendancy to the most powerful position in American politics ever held by an African American, the old-fashioned way. You earned it on the merits, and we are proud of you. We are glad to follow you, and we want you to be our leader. Thank you. I'm supposed to introduce Hillary, so she doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to do something that I have been doing in smaller settings. I'll be brief, but I think it's important that you know this. All of you are here to support her because you know what kind of senator she's been. Many of you are familiar with the work she did in the White House when she was the most active First Lady since Eleanor Roosevelt. She represented our country in 82 nations around the world. In my first term, when we were trying to turn the economy around, stop the slaughter in Bosnia, get the Middle East peace process going, get a ceasefire in Ireland, and do all these other things domestically, Hillary was the face of America in Africa. Hillary was the face of America in India. She was the person who went all over the world to Beijing and spoke at the International Women's Conference and said, women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. And I still, now that we've changed places and I'm in the non-governmental world and she's an elected official, I still find myself in small villages in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, and a woman will come up to me in the most unlikely places and say, I will never forget the hope your wife gave women in this village when she said women's rights were human rights and lifted us up. So, a lot of you are familiar with the fact that, at least in my opinion, and I know a little about policy, she has articulated the most detailed, comprehensive, and effective energy plan to make us more energy independent, fight climate change, improve our security, create millions of jobs, the best economic plan. We know she knows more about health care than anybody else, but I want to tell you something briefly about a period in her life that a lot of you don't know about. And that is before we came to the White House. Because Hillary has always been in public service, just not in public office. And I think those years are important too. We met, I'm going to embarrass her now, 36 years ago this month. This month. And she was in law school, being a student, but also working on legal services, providing legal services to low-income people. She took an extra year in law school, which I was grateful for since I was a year behind her. And she took an extra year at the Yale University Hospital and Child Study Center to study children in the law and to study the interests of children. Okay, then law school wasn't like it is now when there's slightly more than half the legal graduates every year of women. Back then, it was a relatively rare deal. So if you were a woman with a degree from Yale or Harvard, you could have whatever job you wanted when you got out of law school. And she walked away from all these big dollar jobs and took a job at the Children's Defense Fund to lobby for the interests of poor children in this country. And then after a brief stint in the House Judiciary Committee, she came to Arkansas. She taught in the law school, and she set up another legal aid clinic for poor people. And President Carter appointed her to the National Board of the Legal Services Corporation, and when she was 29 years old, she was the chair of the National Board of the Legal Services Corporation in this country. And when I became the governor of Arkansas, she did a couple of interesting things. She became the honorary chair of our children's hospital, and during her service, it became the 7th largest children's hospital in the entire United States, in our little state. Then she heard about a preschool program in Israel called HIPPY, Home Instruction Program for Parents of Preschool Youngsters. Some of you may know about it. That the Israelis, a woman named Aviva Lombard, developed for immigrants coming into Israel who were not of European heritage, because they were afraid the kids would have a hard time integrating into the society and doing well in school. And we had a lot of poor people in the Delta and other places. So she brought the woman who created the program in Israel to Arkansas. We set up one there. Today, there is a HIPPY program for America, headquartered here in New York City in 26 states. But the biggest program still, it's an amazing program, the best preschool program I've ever seen. The biggest one in our country is still the one Hillary started over 25 years ago. And then she headed a rural health program for me and got rural health care to thousands of people who didn't have it, and headed our educational standards program. And when I ran for president in 1992, a nationally recognized education expert said, you know, in the last decade, all the states have tried to improve their schools, but the two that have made the most progress are South Carolina and Arkansas, because of Hillary. And she was never elected to anything during all this period. Now let's go back to when we met. About a year and 2 or 3 months after we met, I tried to convince Hillary to leave me after we worked together in the 72 campaign. And she said, it's embarrassing, she said, don't you like me anymore? I said, no, I love you, but when we got out of law school, I'm going home. I don't have a job. I don't have an income. I'm up to my ears in debt. I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I have to go home and try to get into public life, or I will evaporate. It's who I am. And that's what you should do. You should either go back to Chicago or go to New York and do this. Because I now have met all the best people in our generation, and you're the best. You got the best combination of mind and heart and ability to make a decision and feel the human consequences of it of anybody I've ever seen. That's what I told her. Now, what I want to say to you today is, I feel more strongly about that today than I did when I said it 35 years ago. That's why she should be president. The only reason to elect a president is that the person running would be the best president. We never needed one more that could restore our standing in the world and get America together and going again at home. And you will never find anybody who will do a better job of it than she will.
Thank you. You know, when we were standing backstage and Charlie Rangel and Chuck Schumer and Bill Clinton were about to go out, and some of the wonderful staff people who put this together were trying to make suggestions what each of them might say, I said, forget it. It's unplugged. It's unscripted. These three can talk an owl out of a tree. They are among the very best we will ever have, and I am so honored to serve with Chuck and with Charlie, and for my husband to be here tonight. You know, because we've been through so much in the last several years, how important Senator Schumer has been, not only to our state, but to our country. And it has been a great personal as well as professional experience working with him. He is indefatigable, in case you haven't noticed. He is someone who will work around the clock. We not only owe him a lot in New York, we now owe him a lot in America because of what he's done to help us take back the Senate. And it's making so much difference every day. And Bill's right. Charlie actually called me in 1998, and he said, right after Senator Moynihan announced he would retire, he said, well, I really want you to run, and nobody ever seriously had suggested that to me before. You know, in passing, people have said, have you ever thought about it? And I could honestly say, not really. You know, I like what I'm doing, and I love supporting what Bill does. And Charlie said, no, I really want you to think about it. And he has made such a difference in my life. Anybody who knows Charlie Rangel knows what a wonderful human being he is. He has got the heart of a lion. He is so strong. And he does deserve the position as chair of the most important committee in the Congress. And New York is all the better for it, Charlie, that you stayed with it and you now can help lead our country in the right direction. Thank you so much. And finally, it is wonderful for me to be here with Bill and with Chelsea, who's here with a couple of tables of her friends, and so many of you who have been my friends and my supporters. Bill talked, to my surprise, about all those things we've done together and that I've done over so many years. And as I was listening to him, I was thinking what a lucky person I've been. I've had such a fortunate life. But I've never had a better bit of fortune than to be elected senator from the state of New York. And I want to thank every single one of you for supporting me and giving me this chance to serve. And we've come a long way through some challenging times together. And you're here again tonight. I could not be standing here with a banner that says Hillary for President without all of you. Because clearly it is only because of what I've done the last 6 years, added to all my previous life experiences, that I feel ready to assume the position of President of the United States. And that is because all of you have worked with me. I want to thank all of our hosts who put this amazing dinner together. I want to thank all of our volunteers and my staff who have worked just tirelessly on behalf of this successful evening. And I also want to thank the staff here at the Sheraton, which once again has been extremely helpful and accommodating to us. And finally, I want to thank all the elected officials who are here. I've seen some of you, but I haven't seen all of you. But if we could we ask all the elected officials just to stand so we could recognize them. I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Nita. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Gail. Thank you. Thanks, Jerry. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks, Carolyn. We have a great team in New York, and we are united as a team. We work together, and obviously the people here tonight are Democratic office holders, but when it comes to fighting for what we need after 9/11, when it comes to standing up for the health care needs of the people who were injured and who are suffering because of 9/11, when it comes to fighting for the health care need we need and the education funding across the board, you have a great New York team, and I'm so proud to be a member of it, to work with all of these people. You know, when I think about what we're facing in our country today, and both Chuck and Charlie gave you just a few ideas about what we care about and what we're fighting for. It has been a difficult time for America because we haven't had leadership that asked us to think bigger, to reach higher, to be more than we can be individually. And we've been without the kind of guidance that leadership should provide to set goals for our country. We used to set goals in America. I can remember as a little girl knowing that, I was part of something bigger than my family, bigger than my town. One perfect example of that happened to me when I was 10 years old and in 5th grade, and it was after the Russians had shot the Sputnik satellite up in the air, and my father was worried, and I could hear the adults talking about what it meant. And so when I walked into my 5th grade classroom one day, I wasn't surprised when Mrs. Krause said, "Children, the President wants you to learn math and science." I was sure that President Eisenhower had personally called Mrs. Krause and said, "We want all of these children to learn math and science." Because that's what I thought America was about. We would all do our part. we would respond. And when President Kennedy said we're going to send a man to the moon and bring him home safely, I didn't know how that was going to happen, but I had no doubt we were going to do it because that's who Americans are. We're the people who dream big and set big goals and then work, rolling our sleeves up together to make them happen. But what are our goals today? What is it we're trying to achieve as a nation? You know, one of the most tragic moments after the horrific attacks of 9/11 was how people were looking for some direction. What were we going to do together? How were we going to respond? How were we going to take on the enemy? How were we going to heal the wounded? How were we going to comfort those who had lost loved ones? And many of us were waiting to hear our president summon us to something that we could all be a part of. And what were we asked to do? Go shopping. That was it. No greater goal, no bigger vision, no sense of who we as a nation were, that we could take our values and show them to the world. We did it in action right here in New York. The resilience and the courage, that spoke louder than any words. But we are still waiting to be asked to play a part in making America all it should be in the 21st century, because we know that previous generations have done that. I'm excited about running for president because I think it's time for us to summon up that American spirit again, to renew the promise of America here at home, and to set some goals. I want to set a goal of universal health care coverage so that every single American can have quality, affordable health care. Now, I know probably better than anyone how difficult that is. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. The hard is what makes it challenging and summons us as Americans to respond, and it is way past time. When Bill and I first addressed that in 1993, 94, you know, we thought that we needed to get ahead of the curve because we could see what was going to come. Well, now we've got nearly 47 million uninsured Americans. Premiums have gone up by 90% since 2000. We've got people who are insured, but it doesn't do them much good. I was in Texas, I was in Austin on Friday night, and I met a woman who came up to me at an event and said, "Senator, I am a professor at a community college here. I make $38,000 a year, and I paid $19,000 for health care last year." And I said, "If it's not too personal, can you tell me why?" And she said, "Yeah, easily. I have a pre-existing condition, so even though I have health insurance, it won't help pay for what I need it for most." I hear stories like that every day. Our offices work to help people who have insurance to get what they thought they had paid for. We're already paying more than any country in the world. I think it's long past time we got our money's worth. So we're going to work together to make sure we get quality, affordable health insurance. And we're going to set another goal of energy security. And I've put forth plans, and we're going to work together to try to persuade the Congress in the next 2 years to do what we know needs to be done. But we're somewhat doubtful we'll be able to get this president to do everything that's required, but we're going to keep trying, and then when I'm president, we will have the energy agenda that we should have for clean, renewable energy. And this is one of those win-win-wins for America. We can begin to break our addiction to foreign oil with homegrown and American-owned energy sources, and make the world safer for us and our friends and allies. We also will begin to deal with one of the great planetary challenges that humankind has ever confronted, global climate change. And we will start doing what we should have been doing for years in trying to address what it means to put so much greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. But finally, we will create millions of new jobs. You know, every generation we have to generate more jobs, high-paying jobs that will give people a middle-class lifestyle and lift up those who are working hard so that their standard of living can improve. We can do this. We're already seeing the implications of it throughout our own state. where we're watching old breweries being turned into ethanol plants, where we're hoping to have a coal-fired power plant, get new technology for clean coal. They'll create hundreds of more jobs just in those two projects, and we can replicate that all across our state and all across America. It is long past time that America seized the opportunity we gave up on more than 30 years ago. After the first time gas prices went up, we were all organized and we got conservation-minded and we became more energy efficient. Then gas prices went down and we said, well, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Let's make up for lost time. Let's have an energy policy that is worthy of our children and our grandchildren and our future. And I promise you that we will do that when I am president. We will also set a goal that I think is one of the most important things we can do for our economy and our future. And that is to make sure that at the beginning of life, children have access to an opportunity to prepare them for school. They need a preschool Head Start-like program, and I would like to see it for every child who will otherwise enter school so far behind they will never catch up. And at the other end, let's make college affordable again for every single youngster, every person changing careers. Let's open the doors of college. It is one of the most common concerns I hear as I travel around our state and around the country. Chuck has been working on this for years, and he knows as well as I do that families that used to be able to save to send a son or a daughter to college are just now overwhelmed by what the costs are. And if they do get their child in, very often the costs make it impossible for that young person to finish. Last year in America, there were more bankruptcies than college graduates. And that is just one little fact that suggests we're heading in the wrong direction. We need to be doing everything possible so that hardworking, worthy students can go to college and complete college. It's good for them. It is good for our country. So let's set a goal of making college affordable again so that we open those doors that have been closing. And let's set a goal to respect and support science, research, technology. We have turned against science in this government. We have cut the programs that have been the lifeblood, that have created the new jobs, provided the advances. We've had an anti-science approach that has undermined the incredible enterprise of science. And I think we can do so much better, and we have to, because that's where most of our economic growth comes from. And we've got to get back into the business of a public-private partnership to support science and technology. And finally, we need an economy that supports the middle class. We need an economy that is not only creating new jobs, but helping people start businesses and giving them the tools they need to be successful. And one of the ways we can help doing that is by getting back to fiscal responsibility in the federal government's budget, creating the balanced budget and the surplus that Bill left that we had just 6 short years ago. Why does that matter? Because we have to start incentivizing savings, both in our government and in the individual's life, in order to be prepared for what lies ahead. Social Security, Medicare, all those programs are going to need to be modernized. We're going to have to fund them to make sure they're available for the people who will need them. We had the opportunity at the end of the Clinton administration. It has been squandered. And in fact, we now seem to see the deficits as just something that we shouldn't worry about very much anymore. But I disagree with that. I think both the budget deficit and the trade deficit are problems that we have to figure out how to cope with. And one of the best things we can do is to get the federal government back on a pay-as-you-go, sensible policy so that we're not digging ourselves and our children into an even bigger and deeper fiscal ditch. Now, it's not only at home that we have work to do. We have a lot of work to do around the world. And, Bill said that I'd been to all of these countries. Well, many of you have been to many countries. And so many of you come back and tell me how dismayed you are to hear what people are now saying about America. This is not the America we love. This is not the America that has put the best ideals of humanity before the world for so many years. We have to get back to regaining America's standing in the world and respect for who we are. That is the best way to deal with these long-term problems we confront. We need more friends and allies, and we need to demonstrate to the rest of the world who are looking at us with some skepticism and even worse, that we want to work together to deal with the threat of terrorism and extremism, to deal with global climate change, HIV/AIDS, and so much else. I am absolutely convinced we can regain our standing, but it will be a challenge to do that. And we will need a president who will reach out to the rest of the world immediately to say that America is back. The days of ignoring you or basically treating you as though you were irrelevant to solving these global problems we face are over. And certainly among the most pressing problems that confront us is the war in Iraq. And many of you have spoken to me about this issue. There are probably as many opinions about it in this room as there are people. We never should have gone there. We never should have seen the mismanagement and the bad decisions that unfortunately have marked this administration's behavior. But we are there now, and we've got to end the war in the right way. We've got to begin to bring our troops home and understand what remaining security interests we have. I wish we'd been able to pass our Democratic alternative in the Senate the way that our Democratic members of the House could pass theirs, and we're going to wait to see if they can get some real teeth into that appropriations that funds the war, and then we will try to do our part to get it passed in the Senate. But as Chuck and I can tell you, this is an evolving effort. We are trying to gain support from Republicans because in the Senate we can't get anything done unless we do. But we are convinced we can slowly and surely make progress because the reality will finally intrude upon the ideology and the partisanship. And more Republicans will join us in saying we have to change direction. That is a long-term commitment. I wish the President would change direction now and that we would begin to redeploy our troops and change the nature of the mission. But if he doesn't begin to extricate us from Iraq by the end of his term, as President, I will. And I will start that immediately upon taking office. Now, this is one of those elections that I think people will look back and read about in history books, and they'll say that was a really important defining moment in American history. And we're so lucky on the Democratic side because we have great candidates running, and they represent the best of America. So we're going to have a vigorous Democratic contest, and I'm looking forward to it. I love getting out there and hearing what's on people's minds, and I love talking about New York. I love telling people about what we have in our state and how they need to come visit. And when I'm introduced, as I was recently, by a woman in Iowa who had only been to New York once, I said, well, you've got to come back. Because I feel so strongly that we in New York really do represent not just the country but the world. And what I have seen here and what I have learned here, I will take with me through the campaign and into the White House. But I will need your help. This is going to be an exciting and hard-fought campaign. And I will ask every one of you to take this journey with me. Because I know that it's not only about electing new leadership, it is about a call to action and new citizenship responsibilities. If I'm going to ask that we have universal health care, I'm also going to ask people to take better care of themselves. We can't afford an exploding epidemic of diabetes. We can't afford to have so many of our people chronically ill. We all have to work harder. And again, as a child, I don't know how many of you remember the President's Physical Fitness Awards. We were all taken into the gym, and we all jumped, and we ran, and we were all given these little certificates. And, you know, we all felt like, again, President Eisenhower, President Kennedy, President Johnson, they were getting those reports about how far we jumped and how high, you know, we were able to go that day. Well, let's give our kids this feeling that taking care of themselves is part of what it means to be a young American again. And when it comes to a new energy proposal and a new energy agenda, I'm going to ask people to conserve more and be more energy efficient. You know, my husband goes around with these boxes of fluorescent bulbs, and, you know, he's putting them in anywhere he possibly can. Well, you know, I laughed when I first saw him, but he's 100% right. He is saving energy in America. And my late father used to go around turning off every light. And, you know, I'd roll my eyes. Well, now I go around turning off every light. And when I do, I go turn off the light and I say, take that, Iran, and, you know, take that, Venezuela. I mean, we should not be sending our money to people who are not going to support our values. And, you know, when it comes to education, yes, I want to have a better education system, but it won't do anybody any good if families don't support education, if they don't encourage their children to study hard, if the community doesn't support that. So this is going to be a call to action for all of us. And I think America is ready to be asked to do something besides go shopping. I think we're ready to take our country back, have a new future we can be proud of, take our place in the world again, and give the world and our people a chance to show what America can do together. Thank you all very, very much for your help tonight. God bless you.